Hello everybody and welcome to Silverstone for round one of the Asetek SimSports GT Challenge. Here it's GT3 and GT4 racing here for 4 rounds, all 90 minutes long, making up 6 hours of racing over the course of this season. We are underway here for the opening round. Apologies for the technical issues to start this broadcast here tonight on RaceSpotTV, but here with you for this one will be myself, Ewan O'Leary. Paul Smith will be alongside me for this opening round as well. Good to be alongside you, Paul, for what's a very busy opening round, I've got to say. Over 50 cars on what is thankfully a big Grand Prix circuit, but will not be without interest, with GT3 and GT4 machinery sharing the track together.
Yeah, certainly lap traffic will become a factor in this race, that is for sure. And hello everybody, pleasure to have you all along here. And well, I mean, we're only 10 minutes into this race, so that's you've not missed much. There's been a little bit of drama. I've been trying to keep everybody up to date in the chat as well on YouTube, so hopefully that helped everyone. But no, it's good to be back with this series.
It is. Before we get into the current running order, let's have a look at what we've got coming up. Every what was it called? Fortnightly races, is the word I'm looking for. Snetterton for round 2. Our only trip abroad from the UK anyway is at round 3. That's to Spa, and then to Brands Hatch for the finale. First place in all of the classes get a 1-hour session in the base performance simulator GT Sim. So that is for the winners of all 4 categories. There's GT3 Pro and Am and GT4 Pro and Am, which we will explain a little bit deeper later on. There's a random selection for the first of the other prizes brought to you by Asetek SimSports. The first of them awarded to any driver selected at random out of all of those who complete more than 50% of the race distance in all 4 races of the championship, which is quite a good idea to keep people in the races. And they win a set of La Prima Sim Racing pedals and the La Prima Direct Drive wheelbase with a quick release adapter goes to the driver with the most points in the championship overall, regardless of class. So the points are tallied up separately, and whoever's got the most out of all 4 will take that bottom prize. So worth bearing in mind as we go through with the season. Before we go any further as well and getting to some actual racing, let's just quickly tell you about who is leading in each class, as I believe we're about to, and we are entering the first round of traffic for the GT3s at the moment. Just completing the end of lap 6, Kyle Falero is leading the way just narrowly ahead of Remy Gilbert in the GT3 Pro standings. In GT3 Am, we've got Gianluca Elia in the 111 car leading the way. That's 11th place, 10th place overall, just past Leaking McGee. Adam Locke is second there with a few cars and a few seconds separating them. And in GT4, all the way back there, down in 30th place, Kieran Sharp is leading the way. GT4 Pro, that is. Oliver Ettridge is leading in GT4 Am, just ahead of Nathan Tagan, Lewis Clark. They're all in the train for that front position in GT4. There are the classes, split into Pro and Am, of course, Paul, but apart from that, they're very big classes, and that will leave us with a lot of racing over the course of the 4 rounds.
Yeah, 31 GT3 cars, 20 GT4 cars. It's a huge field, and you made a very good point there, Ewan. We've probably got the best track to start off this championship at with such a big field. Silverstone on the full Grand Prix layout with the Silverstone wing as the main pit lane here. Certainly gives these drivers plenty of space. It's a nice wide track for them, but when we get to that first round of traffic, which the leaders in GT3, they're coming down the hangar straight now as the back of GT4 is just coming through Stir, it's going to be a lap or so before they start encountering that traffic.
It is, but we're nearly there. I guess these guys will have had a bit of a dry run at this at the end of last year, because we, of course, part of Motorsport UK, took part in the Brick Car 24 Hours of Silverstone, which happened on iRacing once again. It was a little bit different this year to what we've seen the year before in 2022. The end of 2023, we had just GT3 and GT4 racing, once again to help keep the classes a little bit bigger, and it actually kept us very entertained with lots of great racing going on throughout all of the 24 hours this time around. So that was all good, and what we learnt from that, I suppose, is that lap traffic is going to be less of a recurring feature in this race, I would argue, than it would be maybe in some others. The best lap times are just under 2 minutes for the GT3s. They're around 2 minutes 10 for the GT4s. Now, if you're going to average that out, that means that you're catching the GT4s or every individual GT4 car every 12 laps. Now, it doesn't quite work like that because the GT4s aren't running exactly together and they get strung out, and so it gets a bit odd, and you have to do it more often than that. However, it's taken them quite a while. It's not often in multi-class endurance racing, if you can call this one of those. You get into the race and 15 minutes have gone by before you've actually encountered any lap traffic.
Yeah, there you see Gallo Valero, the Apex Racing Team driver, at the front of the field, ahead of Remy Gilbert. So those two together, they've been slowly pulling away from Luciano Vilvotte. So definitely we'll see how they sort of push on together at the front, whether you're going to see them work together. But yeah, you're quite right though that the GT4 field does get quite strung out at the start, and just means that it makes life a little bit more easier for your GT3 leaders, because at some tracks, and I'm thinking Brands Hatch at the end of the season, it's going to be quite tight, and it'll be very difficult for GT3 traffic to make it through cleanly without it affecting them too much.
I would argue that Brands Hatch is the shortest by some distance of the circuits that we've got, although Snetterton is not a really long circuit like Spa is, for example. We'll be at Snetterton in 2 weeks' time. All races here live on RaceSpotTV, of course, which we'll be bringing to you. So I hope that you can join us on a Wednesday night for the next a few fortnights, if you like. Now the traffic really will start to bite. Gallo Valero has been trailed by Remy Gilbert quite closely, actually, from this opening of the race. From what we've seen anyway, it's been these two, 1 and 2, by quite some distance. They're 3 seconds ahead of Luciano Vipper, who's in the 3rd position, and then going all the way back to even 10th place, and you're already a quarter of a minute back off the lead. But now maybe it could change a little bit. The one advantage they do have is that it's taken them 15 minutes to catch up to the GT4, so maybe they're a bit more strung out than what you'd otherwise see in a multi-class race like this one. But nevertheless, it's going to affect the racing, as you've already seen. A car going for a spin in front of them. Thankfully, it's out of the way by the time the leaders get there.
Yeah, but this was the first little sort of group, a little quartet that was together out there that was potentially affecting them. And here, Copse Corner is one of those corners where it really is difficult to go too wide through there with the different classes, because those GT4s, they haven't got as much aerodynamic grip as these GT3s. So that means that on corner exit, they're actually going to be pushing wider than the GT3s can do. So if a GT3 tries to go around the outside of GT4 traffic, it could end up meaning that they end up with that GT4 just understeering into them. So that's something that the leaders and all the GT3 traffic has got to be wary of running with these GT4s on track.
They do. Now down in towards the final chicane again for Gallo Valero, who's leading Remy Gilbert just by a few tenths of a second. They'll both get through in this Aston Martin, you'd imagine, before turn number 1. Will Valero do it into the final corner indeed? Looks like it. The Aston Martin pushed quite wide. Stuart Bickley it was. Doesn't flash the lights in protest necessarily, but probably loses a little bit of time as a result. So we go a bit further back here to the mid-pack of the GT3s. Gianluca Elliott is leading in GT3 AM. He's in 10th place in the triple one Porsche that you can see just ahead of Lee King McGee, who's not in the same class. And the advantage that you get in AM is, especially after qualifying, you can actually put some cars between yourself and some of your rivals in AM, sort of without really doing anything, because they're not filtered through. It's not all of the pros put in front of all of the AMs by any means. You've got to qualify your way into the position that you want to be, and that can give you an advantage in AM. It's certainly given Gianluca Elliott an advantage, because not only is he ahead by what is 5.5 seconds here, even more in fact, over 6.5, but he's got those few cars in between, which is a really nice safety net after just 20 minutes.
Johnny Elia is somebody who is not somebody who's not familiar with his car. I've seen him race in Porsches in this GT3 car for 11/10 Racing in various series that were broadcast here on RaceSpot. You're talking about the Porsche Club of Great Britain, World GT Championship. He's been racing in that 911 GT3R, and so he's very familiar with this car. This track, though, I don't think it's necessarily suited to that Porsche. He says that, as there's a number of them. In fact, Porsche's outnumbering Lamborghinis in the top 10. So that shows you how much a commentator can get it wrong in one sentence.
Well, I mean, it's not winning, so so that kind of backs up your point in some ways. But I don't know. It could just be one of those popular cars. We always talk about this with BOP. Is it the car that's actually quickest, or is it the quickest drivers who've selected it? Now, you can have that argument across multiple manufacturers here. Is it side by side? Oh, contact for the GT3 AM leader, and all sorts of flustering going on, because getting involved there was the BMW, the number 3 car of Charles Wimbley, trying to get up on the inside there as well. That was all very awkward, and these are the problems as an AM leader as well. You're fighting pro cars around you who you'd really rather get out the way, but of course they're not going to. Now he gets stuck up behind a Mercedes, and Leaky McGee will go through.
You've got to pick and choose your battles when you are in mixed championship categories, either being AMs or pros, and so definitely you've got to pick and choose which fights you want to see out, and which ones are the sort of retreat, the better part of valor. So definitely you got to work things in your advantage. You've got to be able to think the long game in terms of championship, and if you're in an AM car in GT3 or GT4, and you're surrounded by pros, you've got quite a bit of a gap back to your next AM competitor, well, maybe don't fight quite as tooth and nail over that pro as you would with the rest of your AM class.
Here's Garvalero again. Oh, getting caught up behind a Porsche this time. Very close on the way towards the hangar straight, and had Remy Gilbert been closer, he might have been able to take advantage of it, but wasn't quite able to on that occasion. It was, I think, Nathan Tagg, actually, of the GT4 Amfield, second place in that class, who was, not, I don't say in the way, but as far as Valero was concerned, was out of the Chapel corner there. Now through the final turn for Valero. He's going to have to slow up again in the final turn here for more Porsches. And here we go. Remy Gilbert is going to be homing into the back of that Lamborghini, but he's going to just stay behind. He won't force the issue 3 wide. In fact, they're both going to do well to actually get through into turn number 1 here. And there's the limitations of traffic. Remy Gilbert has basically lost half a second through that one move.
I think Gilbert, what you're seeing here is that he's quite comfortable sitting behind Gal Valero, just matching him step by step. There is a little bit of risk that is assigned to that in terms of with the traffic coming along, that you could end up being gapped by the car in front. And speaking of the car in front, Gal Valero, nice move into Brooklands, although it goes a little deep. And there's Gilbert right back with him. But I think this is all about strategy. I think Remy Gilbert right now is thinking the long game. There's a terse flash of the headlights from the Mercedes GT4. But Gilbert, I do think that he is going for the long game. He's thinking strategy. It's an hour and a half race. These GT3 cars generally only go for an hour.
Yeah. And in theory, that means the window can open up in 5 minutes or so. But is anybody going to take that when that means that you're basically running the car with the heaviest amount of fuel throughout the entirety of the race? Are they going to run the tank dry and then just take half towards the end? Are they going to change tyres or not? Because you're only going to take on about half a tank. What's that going to do to your tyre strategy in conditions like these? Still sunlight out here at Silverstone, which is somewhat rare, of course, especially in March, but there we go. That's what we've got here this afternoon at this great racetrack. We'll see what they'll do in those pit stop phases very shortly, but Cavallero still leads the way. He's being trailed the entire way by Remy Gilbert at the moment, but can't be overtaken, it seems. Already one driver out of the race, unfortunately. It's a GT4. David Nichols in the Aston Martin, unfortunately, has already retired from the race. Don't know if we necessarily saw what happened to him, but there were, I think it's fair to say, Paul, a few incidents. You were trying to keep him updated, of course, in the YouTube chat as we were going along. One or two drivers heading off the road on the opening lap and through the opening minutes.
Yeah, I mean, there was an instant just before we came live with Marco Silva and I can't remember who it was now, but there was a big crash down the down the hangar straight, should I say, with a Porsche. I think it was Nick Scott that he made contact with, and that just meant that he's dropped down the order, and yeah, it was suboptimal as to give the Ron Dennisism of that, but certainly there's plenty of scope for action. And look at this Cal Valero feeling the need to break the draft here down the old pit straight. Yeah,
he's been doing that a couple of times so far. Just noticed him moving the car around. And I've got to say, when we looked at the entry list for this series, Paul, and we were earlier on, we picked out Cal Valero as the real star name. And to be honest, not only the star name, I didn't necessarily think anybody would even challenge him here. But Remy Gilbert, who I really don't know very much about at all, is challenging him very closely right now and giving him a right run for his money. Now, we'll see how that develops over the course of the race, of course, because there's a long way to go. We've only had half an hour of racing of what's actually going to be 6 hours of racing in the next 2 months. But nevertheless, what a start to the race from him. And maybe Valero will be surprised he's getting such a challenge early on.
Yeah, Valero will be thinking, oh, what black cats have crossed my path this morning? I wanted a nice, easy Wednesday evening to be able to go through, and yeah, he's been able to put that lap then on the 77 of Dan Tomlinson, who's already been down pit road about 11 laps ago, so issues for him. Further down the order, more GT3 moves being made, and BMW heading to pit road, so decided that is the time to do that, and that was Rocco Valentino, as well as Nick Dealey and Andy Jones. Now this is where I think it's a little early perhaps for a pit stop at this time, but it's at this point of the race where if you're in that mid-pack and you're stuck in a queue of cars and you feel that you're quicker, sometimes it's better to take that early pit stop, find yourself a bit of clear air, and just put in some hot laps.
Exactly. I reckon the most amount of laps you can do on fuel here is 32, based on another series race that we had here a couple of weeks ago, longer than that maybe. 32 laps seem to be the consensus for how long you can go. Now, they're expected, because it's 2-minute laps, it's actually very easy to work out around here in GT3 cars, just half the minutes in the race. 90-minute race, of course, 45 laps. That's how it should work out anyway. There's 32 laps remaining by that reckoning, because we just crossed over 13 gone. So actually, they seem to be okay in terms of making it on fuel, which is not always the case in GT3 these days. You can't always comfortably make an hour, especially at some circuits, some of the more wide open ones like this one, but actually the fuel burn is pretty nice round here, so you can get away with pitting there, I believe. It's just the thing, going back to what I said earlier on, do you really want to have the heaviest car in theory throughout the entirety of the day, or has anybody gone with what I would call a plunge and taken, a less amount of fuel off of the start of this one and pitting early? Well, the three behind those leading two, Vipit, Ward and Ansel, all following each other.
Yeah, Jack Southfield as well, heading on to pit road, so some early pit stops being taken here. Now, I am surprised by that, but to be honest, it is a legitimate strategy. You can do that. It is certainly going to be intriguing to see how this all pans out to them. But these drivers, I mean, they'll have had a plan going into this race. They'll know what they wanted to do with this one, and they'd also have a backup plan in the back of their mind, as here's Adam Graveson, who bit of a sympathy spin there.
Yeah, and someone having to come to a complete stop to avoid everybody. Thankfully, there was a small gap in the traffic there to allow everybody to get away.
Oh.
Grevson, so Grevson's punted into a spin actually by the Porsche as he was slowing. And I don't think that's Grevson's first spin of the day, is it? We've seen almost all of that team's cars go around off of the start of this race or in the first half an hour.
Yeah, there's that team that they've not had the best of openings, it must be said. And they certainly will be looking to maybe just say goodnight to this round and to push on, as there you see that's what happened right back at the start there. So we have been able to get the hamster to work away at the wheel. Marco Silva as well was involved, and there is what happened to him at the start of the race.
So he was involved in the initial contact, and I guess spooked by that, missed his line and then got into the side of someone. That was pretty rude, I'm going to use the word.
Leaders in.
For Stephen Hobbs, and the leaders are in. So we do have some early stops here, it's fair to say. Not sure why, but because that's not the strategy I was envisioning at the start of the day. But we're half an hour in, and Gal Valero and Remy Gilbert follow one another into the pit lane. Now, what are the stops like for the rest of them? Well, they're pretty much entire stops. Other than Marco Silva, who's already been in for an early stop about 10 laps ago, Vipvet Ward and Ansel all took more than 40 seconds on the pit lane, which surely suggests a full stop. So I guess maybe they underfueled to start with, started with half a tank maybe, but that's a puzzling one in my opinion. I wasn't expecting to see quite so many of this strategy actually prevailing, and it seems in GT4 the same is going on. Who out of Valero and Gilbert is going to make it out first as some of the GT3s carry on here out on the circuit? That's because Vipvet is in the 14 Porsche, of course, and he'll be the first car out there on the circuit who hasn't stopped on this occasion. It's Valero who's out first by quite some distance. 0.6 of a second taken out of Remy Gilbert, and that's a big gap that he might be able to drive home now. Yeah,
so pit stop times, you're about 0.3 of a second quicker for Valero. It is a there we go. Thank you very much. I was looking through the rule book and I couldn't find it in the rule books. Thank you very much, Jilted Gaming. There you go. 50% fuel at the start, but can fuel to 100%. I couldn't see anything in the rules about that myself, so that's why I was getting a little bit puzzled there. But there you go. That explains it all. So there we go. So now we know what's happening, and everybody's basically just pitted and said, right, well, fuel to the end.
I'm not sure. How does that work? I was under the impression that in iRacing you could only limit fuel for the entire session.
If it's a fixed setup, so for each car you have a fixed setup, you fix as an administrator how much fuel is in that setup to start with.
Very good. Very good. So that effectively enforces a pit strategy almost, doesn't it? Because it means everyone's going to have to put the same amount of fuel in. And we've got an hour dash to the end now. So that's the small print of the fixed setup, I suppose.
See, personally, this is just me personally, I prefer having it where you basically got an hour and a half race. I like the opportunity of people to be able to have more variety of the strategy myself, rather than being forced, you're hand forced basically, that you're going to have the pit stop at the 1/3 distance of the race, and then you're just going to go to the end of the race. I personally would like a bit more openness in terms of when and where they can choose to make that pit stop. That's just me.
Yeah, I think so, but it's all creating different races. I really like the idea of limiting the fuel at the start and then being able to do what you like with it afterwards. I think that's a fantastic idea that I've not actually seen actioned in iRacing before, but that's just me. So yeah, good to see. It has created a gap at the front though. Remy Gilbert is 3 seconds off of Valero now. This is the battle for third place in GT3. Meanwhile, the pit stops are getting shaken out in GT4. They're able to go a little bit longer on their tanks, clearly, and their pit stops are a little bit longer too. They're nearly a minute stationary. Mikey Pollard has come out first by the looks of things. Not entirely sure how he's managed that, because I didn't envisage him being first at the end of the pit stop phase, and he might not be. Kieran Sharp and Daniel Thomas are fighting for that honour, and they were legitimately side by side coming out of the pit lane there. There'll be nose to tail here, and it may well be a two-horse race now in GT4, but what a great battle in the pit lane, side by side between those two.
Yeah, so Michael Pollard trying his best to move up and to get into the top two positions, just not close enough to make that one work. Would have been, of course, up to speed, whereas those drivers are now just getting back up to speed with that. And Pollard would have had just that little bit of an advantage with warm tyres and knowing how the balance of the car has been affected by putting a full fuel tank into the car. But yeah, Kieran Sharp, Daniel Thomas, absolutely neck and neck. And I will say that Richard Simner down, they're pretty close together as well. Nathan Tague, Oliver Etheridge are involved in that one. It's quite close out there on track between those. Richard Jepp as well in that, and that's in GT4.
Yeah, it's all very interesting in GT4 actually. It was very close for the lead not so long ago, but these two have really risen to the fore since then. Their pit stops were actually shorter than the rest. I wonder whether they managed to get a lap or two in those first half an hour, and then they could just exclude a lap or two of fuel at the end there. It's certainly given them the advantage over the rest, providing they do have enough on board for the remaining 54 minutes of this race. But Kieran Sharp just ahead of Daniel Thomas. Sharp returning, of course, to that lead that he held not so long ago in the opening part of this race. So those two are well out front. It's actually 10 seconds now back to the leader in AM. Nathan Tague is right there in the 5th and 6th positions, fighting for the AM lead. So in fact, both classes in GT4 have a leading battle, which is encouraging to see, and the same can't be said, interestingly, for the GT3s just yet, although it's a little bit out of proportion because Alistair Leckie hasn't or has stopped, but not for the what I would describe as a required amount of time. He's only been in the lane for 13 seconds. I wouldn't imagine that's enough to see him home.
Yeah, I think that was more of an enforced thing after an incident for Alistair there. So, yeah, Johnny Elia is the net leader in AM for GT3. But, around goes Nathan Tague. And can he keep it out the way? Yes, he can. But that, I think, is going to be a little bit of a change of underpants moment for him.
And it may well settle the race in GT4 AM. A little bit early to go out on a limb with that one, but it's certainly created a big gap now for Oliver Etheridge, who is still leading the way. So Nathan Tague had a really good opportunity there to take the lead away, and unfortunately he's actually turned that around into a real disadvantage for himself. This is the moment on board with him through turns 1 and 2. He's just up on that grass on the left-hand side there. An unforced error, you could describe that as.
Oh, Nathan. Oh, he'll be kicking himself on that one. And he's a team boss as well, so he knows he's got to answer to himself on that one, I'm afraid. Yeah, it's going to be all right, maybe don't try and cutting the corner quite so much as he did there. As we look a little bit further back then in GT3, and the 26 is Nick Dealey then. So Keith Stewart's trying to work his way through in that Porsche on the BMW, and behind them is the Mercedes of Andy Jones as well.
You mentioned there Nathan Tague, not someone known for driving and known for other aspects of sim racing instead. Well, Nick Dealey is another one of those. He's currently in 5th place in GT3 AM, right in behind right at the head of this group in the 26 car, and most known for race strategizing his way through longer endurance races, or his team's way through longer endurance races. I haven't seen him driving, in fact, as John McClune, I'm afraid, has gone off the road in the Ferrari Now, he is still in the race, which is a good thing. Same can't be said for Mac Farquhar, unfortunately, who seems to have retired maybe from GT3, although I didn't see an incident for him necessarily.
He had an incident early on in the race and dropped down the order, and then I think has decided that, do you know what, I think today's a bad day, let's park the car and come back another time here in this series. But yeah, certainly not the best day for Mac, and we'll be trying to come back on that one in the future. Nathaniel Simpson does also have a mechanical meatball warning flag.
So that was all very close. Nick Dealey might be in trouble here. He got caught up behind that BMW just in behind. It's his fellow kind, I'm afraid, who have just created this opportunity. Keith Stewart couldn't really capitalise. What about Andy Jones? Oh, it's a big dive down the inside from the Porsche. It's to be side by side through Stoke Corner. What a dive that was from Keith Stewart there, who turned defence into attack all very quickly. In the end, it's not been fruitful for him, and he'll have to try again another day, but that was spectacular. It was late on the brakes into Stowe, which doesn't even really have a braking zone, as I'm afraid Alistair Leckie is having a bit of a disaster on the circuit at the moment through the opening sector.
Yeah, that's not great, and that's why had contact, and that's a Mercedes GT4, and don't say you have contact returning. No, you do behave yourselves there. So yeah, just a little bit of a punt from behind and not holding on to the brakes there, and it just wound him back into that GT4. But yeah, we're getting all sorts of drama happening out there. It's difficult to go around the outside of Stowe. It really, down the inside of Stowe, should I say, because you can get on the power earlier as the car on the outside, and it then means you've got the inside for the Vale into Club Corner as well. So it is tricky to make that move into Stowe work out for you.
Here's a trip down pit lane, I'm afraid, for Nathaniel Simpson in the 911 car. Only half a minute needed in the box as a result of the slightly diminished race time we have now for him, but he's back out there on the circuit again, unfortunately down in 27th position. Now, as far as the rules go, the points go down to the top 25 with an additional point for the fastest lap of the race. Doesn't specify that you have to be in any particular position in the order to actually get that extra point, so that's worth bearing in mind too. But that effectively means, if I'm correct, that all of the drivers, especially in GT4, will be guaranteed points almost anyway. So that's worth bearing in mind, and it's worth soldiering on nevertheless. And of course, it puts you into the draw for one of the Asetek SimSports prizes for this GT challenge, which is worth having as well. We're not at the half distance mark yet, so anyone who's retired so far won't have completed more than half of all of the races, which is what you need to do to be entered in for that one. We nearly are at that stage though, just 3 minutes away now from that mark with 48 minutes to go. And now everybody in GT3 has been in for their full stop. Alistair Leckie is now in from the top 10, and there might be a bit of damage to repair now after that little bit of contact. No fast repair used just yet, so might as well do it now, I suppose. In fact, a surprising amount of them have used the fast repair, including Ryan Ward, who I didn't see having any damage in the opening stints of this race. He's running third, but did need a fast repair for whatever reason. Maybe put it on by accident.
John McClune, it goes from bad to worse for him. He's now got a black flag, so it's going to be a trip down pit road for John, and that's the reason why he'll have hit the instant limit, and he also found the Armco barrier as well in all of that. So it's not been a good day at the office for John.
No. And that is a shame to see when it goes from bad to worse for someone like that. This is the battle for third place that was previously held by Luciano Vipvet, but no longer. Philip Hansel and Ryan Ward have both gotten through, and he doesn't look very much like responding at the moment in the Porsche. I mean, maybe your theory about the Porsche not being so strong is coming to the fore here, Paul, because we've got a top 4 covered by Lamborghinis at the moment, with another one in the top 10 in 8th place. So while they are outnumbered in the top 10, I wouldn't argue that the numbers that they're in are showing a particularly beneficial car round here, although it's by no means the worst car to have, I think, at this circuit.
The Porsche is excellent on slow corner exit. The problem here is that you've not got that many slow corners. They're all medium to high speed corners around here. This section, the Porsche will excel because it can get off the corner, especially this left-hander here, through onto the Wellington Straight. You can get the power down nicely and does deliver that well. And its top speed is where the Achilles heel for this Porsche is. So with such a high-speed track, you would have said that it's not the absolute favourite. That Lamborghini, though, just that thunderous V10 engine seems to be quite the choice for those top 4 drivers right now.
It is, and who can blame them? I think it's fair to say. Although the Porsche sounds nice too. And then again, most of the GT3s do, apart from the BMW, sorry. But anyway, there's not too many of those running up towards the front. There is one in 11th place, leaking the gears in the best place of the BMWs. And indeed, one of only 2 BMWs still in this race. Anyway, Marcus Hudson is in the other one, down in 29th in the order. A little bit more representation there in the GT4 class. We're back with a couple of the Porsches all over again. Battle for 6th place between Jack Southfield and George Streetley is between a couple of the Porsches. You can see the manufacturer spread on the left-hand side of your screen there. Especially nice to see in GT4, actually. We've got Aston Martin versus Mercedes, still for the lead, by the way. Only 3 temps cover them. And then Mikey Pollard leading a train of Porsche Caymans in the rest of the field. So there's a nice variety down there in GT4, but here in GT3 as well, there's a few Ferraris up there in the top 15 as well. Good to see all the manufacturers represented, and more, of course, manufacturers represented than what you would get in a previous time on iRacing, due to the amount of cars you can have in a session these days.
Yeah, gives you plenty of variety, does that. Being able to have the different manufacturers. A load of tyre smoke there down at Brooklyn, so something's happened there, as there is your GT4 leaders right now. So Kieran Sharp doing a good job, only just staying ahead though, so he's under some pressure, about half a second between him and Daniel Thomas and Dan Tomlinson. This is another driver who's had not the best of starts to the season and is trying to get back up and going, and that's why we had that tyre smoke. And that, oh dear, the less said about that, the better.
Yes. It feels like the loop is one of those corners where that's the kind of thing happens, but it doesn't make it good by any means. So yes, we'll see what the stewards have to say about that one. And by the way, the stewards aren't live monitoring this session. There will be protests done after the race, and then we'll bring any changes, major changes, to you in 2 weeks' time when we bring you the second round of the Asetek SimSports GT Challenge. So make sure you tune in again on RaceSpotTV for that when we go racing at Snetterton for another 90 minutes. Of course, but it's an interesting way of doing things, and they've also restricted people, Paul, to just 2 protests so that race control aren't spammed by the same drivers, just investigating every single thing possible just because they can.
Just got to make sure you don't have more than 2 incidents involving you. I think that's the key to that one. And if you do end up getting involved in multiple incidents in a race, you maybe have to sort of look back at them all and say, well, actually, I'll have to pick that one and that one. Now, interesting that the leaders in GT4 have got the leaders in GT3 coming up behind them right now to put lap on them again. And Gael Valera is going to catch them, possibly the best point of the track to catch them as well. So Gael, I expect to see go down the inside of one, not the other, but it's a nice section of track to be able to catch lap traffic at.
And I wonder whether what we're seeing right now is a bit more like what we're expecting here from Gael Valero, because we said at the start of the day, you know, he's one of the favourites for this series, if not the absolute favourite for this championship. And now he's starting to prove it. Admittedly, that gap was created during the pit stops, but now that Gilbert hasn't got the slipstream to tow him along, he isn't quite as close to Valera, and he's not staying as close anymore. The gap's only going to extend more when he gets caught up behind some people into Maggots and Beckett's all over again. Just wonder whether we are seeing a bit of the experience from the Apex driver here, and that's just meaning that he is extending the lead now, and whether this is going to be a recurring theme over the season. Challenged early on, but maybe running away and comfortable by the end of these races. It's certainly possible that this situation is a model for the rest of the season.
I'd be actually interested if one of the Apex team was working behind the scenes, just helping out, spotting a little bit for Guile. So that's what's happened. Ryan Ward has had an incident down at Beckett's. I saw I've got a track map here, and it was showing a yellow flag. So Ryan, who's down to 7th now overall, so has had something happen on this lap.
Yes. Okay. Well, we'll see what's happened there, because you're right. He's down quite a few places behind Mike Barber here, and I think he's got pretty big damage. This is the moment. Oh dear. He's trying to get through one of the GT4s on the way through Maggots and Beckett's, and I think one of the good running GT4s as well, actually, through that section of corners. And you just saw the way that the two made contact. It's with Mikey Pollard, by the way. Just look at it there, right on the moment where you can get bad suspension damage, and that's what's happened, you'd imagine, to the Lamborghini, which is now in pit lane.
Ward has a mechanical meatball warning flag now. Did you say that Ryan took a fast repair?
Yes, I did, yes. What a gut wrencher for him.
Wow, that's going to be a long wait in pit road then if that's the case. Mikey Pollard, it's a tricky part of the track, as Lewis Clark has a big moment there on the sausage curb.
Careful.
Oh, yeah, he's pulling away. He's fine. I don't speak to me and Peter Mackay about sausage curbs. We'll, if us two are together on a broadcast, it'd be the next 40 minutes of us saying about how sausage curbs do not belong on a racetrack. Ryan Ward has retired, by the way.
That is a real shame for him, running so well, but getting damaged. And unfortunately, was of his own doing there. He was making his way round the outside of Mikey Pollard through the traffic, which you can do. You're certainly entitled to do that in a GT3, just as long as you do it cleanly through Maggots and Beckett's. You should have the downforce to do it, but it was just Pollard a little bit over-ambitious. Got into the grass on the right-hand side, spun around, and got a hit sort of exactly in the zone where you don't want to be, because that gives you bad rear suspension damage. And we were talking on that point about fast repair earlier on. It might have been absolutely nothing that he was using it for. Thought, well, I'm not going to need it, am I? I'll just repair that 1 second of damage that I had in this pit stop, and it'll be fine. Clearly, if he's accidentally already checked his fast repair and used it that way, then he'll be absolutely furious with himself, because I know that's happened to me in the past, where you're going into the pit lane, you don't actually need to take your fast repair, but you have by accident. And if that's happened here, then he's going to be especially disappointed with himself, because he really needed it then.
Yeah, he wouldn't have chosen to have taken that fast repair unless he felt at that pit stop that he did need it. If he did feel that he was down on, say, top speed because of some damage from an early incident in the race or something like that. That's the only thing I could think of that you would maybe do that. But otherwise, it would be a case of, well, accidents happen. I can guarantee the next race he won't have that ticked. It'll be very much switched off, all that at the pit stop, unless it's absolutely needed.
Here's another replay of Dan Tomlinson into Brooklands. Just goes for a spin and is going to be collected here, is he? Oh no, replicated, I think is the word to use, by Nuno Costa, unfortunately, and Chico Leventhal, who was racing yesterday in an LMP3 at Monza. Incidentally, a little bit less grip in this GT3 in that particular corner, and he pays the price for it around Brooklands there. I think that little string of replays, Paul, shows us maybe the danger point of this circuit. And I remember covering a GT race, or a multi-class race, sorry, that involved GTs here at Silverstone a very long time ago. The one really notable thing a driver told me before it was just how light the rear left gets on the way towards Brooklands when you're sort of braking and turning at the same time. It's such a wide and long drawn out entry into that turn. It leaves you very susceptible to a spin like that one, even with the slightest touch or even no touch actually on the rear.
And did you note how all three of those cars were mid-engine cars? 2 Ferraris and an Audi. Now, the Audi is known as being a bit more sketchy on the rear end. It's just the nature of the car. Those 2 Ferraris, though, I mean, those Ferraris, if you've had the pleasure of seeing them up close and personal, which I've been very fortunate to have done so in the pit lane, those things are just unbelievable works of just absolute engineering, and they've really stepped up the GT3 category, have Ferrari with the 296. So it is a complex car, but if you just carry too much speed into a corner, you can't change the laws of physics, and it means that you're going to end up with the back end going through the corner first and the front end coming around second.
On the subject of seeing the Ferrari up close, by the way, one drove past me on the street like a week ago.
A GT3 car on the street?
Not the GT3 car, the road car, obviously, but still very odd for considering the area I was walking through. But anyway, that's a story for another day. Question in the YouTube chat from Daniel Villola, whether the GT3s will need to pit again. You wouldn't imagine so, because they would have pitted just around the half an hour to go. Mark said earlier on that they'd need 32 laps of fuel in the tank, or they'd need to pit with 32 laps to go to have the fuel in the tank and make it to the end. To my knowledge, that's what everybody has done pretty much, certainly of the main players in this race, so GT3s won't be pitting again. It's left us with this slightly bizarre situation with early pit stops in these races, but a long second stint, which I wonder how it's going to develop over the season, to be honest, because it's certainly a unique situation compared to other series, which maybe would limit fuel to 75% to force a stop, or maybe just leave it as is to allow a really big window and a really big window of opportunity for people to come in.
Yeah, it's the case of this track is quite unique because you have got some longer braking zones at this track. You can actually do quite a bit of lifting and coasting and fuel saving that way without losing too much time. I'm thinking of places like here, down in towards Brooklands. You can just lift off that throttle a little bit earlier. And if you are wondering, if you are new to the world of fuel saving and fuel economy, these cars, the aerodynamics on them, when they're not on the throttle, will slow the cars down because they are causing a drag on the air. So you lift off the throttle early, about 300 meters before a braking zone, let the car naturally slow down a little bit, and then brake that little bit later than you normally would. You're still carrying that speed into the corner, you're just doing it in a different way. And in fact, also, you're helping your tyre wear as well in that situation. You're not putting too much heat through those tyres, so therefore you're able to make the tyres last longer at an optimal range.
Yep. Side by side on the exit of Magnussen, Beckett's Figaro Valero, who's lost a second here in traffic, but it's just the ebb and flow, you'd imagine, for the Frenchman, who's still the comfortable leader in this race tonight. Gianluca Elias now still ahead of Lee King McGee, only extending that gap to Adam Locke, who's now nearly 10 seconds behind in the GT3 AM leading battle. We're just following Jack Southfield and George Streetley, who are now fighting for 5th place, as everyone's been promoted a position after Ryan Ward's demise in this race. Other retirements we've not spoken of so far: Marcus Hudson in the GT3 field leaves us with only one BMW at the front of the field, and Chico Leventhal is also out of the race. So that's 4 of the GT3s out and just 1 at GT4. But with half an hour to go and an hour gone, to have only 5 retirements from 51 cars could have been certainly a lot worse. And I think that's one of the advantages of starting the season here at Silverstone. It's one of those bigger Grand Prix circuits where it is harder to come into contact with either other people or indeed other cars. And in fact, even these days, it has a fair amount of runoff to go with it too.
Yeah, it's going to be all changed in a fortnight, though. Snetterton, it's a narrow track, is that at the best of times. But through that infield section on the 300 layout, it is quite narrow there, and with corners following on from each other, you're going to find it difficult to go side by side. So you're going to have to show an element of patience if you're one of those GT3 drivers there. So definitely it'd be intriguing to see what they're able to do around that track, around that venue next time out in 2 weeks' time. But right now, that's Silverstone, certainly showing some good racing throughout the field. As we've been focusing on this race here for 6th, the race for 3rd is still quite relatively close together, about a second and a half between them, as you see them up on screen. So that's actually just pulled out a little bit, hasn't it, that race for 3rd place?
Yeah, it's been a very good stint here from Philip Ansell by the looks of things. Another half second taken out of Luciano, but there on that lap, for example, and going quite a lot quicker than the rest of the field as well. There's just a bit of a gulfing class between the top 2 and the rest. I think Gal Valero's at 2:01.9 was a result of traffic on the last lap, and he's back in the 2 minutes, high 2 minutes again. Although Remy Gilbert was once again quicker on that last lap. He's going to need to catch by a lot more than the 1/10, half a tenth even, than he did on that last lap if he wants to get anywhere near the race leader in the final half hour. GT4 is a class we haven't checked in with for a while, and that's because Kieran Sharp has raced out to a 1.5 second lead now. There is a fight for 3rd though. Richard Simner has been caught by Oliver Ettridge, who was catching for quite some time periodically in this second stint, and another 2 tenths on the last lap has sort of sealed the deal with regards to slipstream, and so he's right there now. They're nearly quarter of a minute behind the 2 leaders, and Ettridge is the AM leader as well, so his ambition here to get involved here is probably slightly diminished, but nevertheless he looks like he wants to get involved here, despite his over 10-second lead in the AM class. And here he goes to the outside line on the way in towards the final chicane. Goes pretty wide in the light blue, you can see, giving him the inside for the final turn, but no, that's not come to anything, and Oliver Ettridge will now be caught by a couple of GT3s, giving Richard Simner that bit of breathing space.
Oliver's got time though. He doesn't need to rush this one. There's still a third of the race to go here. We've just gone past the 2/3 mark of this race. So yeah, he doesn't need to rush right now. He just needs to be patient, and he also doesn't necessarily need to get 3rd place. At this stage of this contact, that was a GT4 car that he's made contact with, and that could have huge implications there for Oliver Ettridge.
It really could. There it is again. It's the GT4 turning across the GT3 on that situation, in my opinion, and then they've got nowhere to go really. Unsighted, Ettridge goes straight into the side of Andy Chell. Now and he's clipped again actually, finally gets going again now, but if that's given Oliver Ettridge damage, then he'll be in real trouble here. The gap has opened up naturally because of just the contact. Will do that anyway, but we'll need to monitor the lap time from next lap onwards, because if he has damage, then he could be in trouble. Mikey Pollard is next. He's not in the same class as Oliver Ettridge, but Nathan Teig is, and he would have thought after his spin that maybe it was all over. Maybe it isn't quite done yet.
Yeah, there's 10 seconds between Ettridge and Teig here in this race, and as I say, there's plenty of time left in this one yet, so do stick around. I will say credit to the GT4 driver for holding his brakes. So often you see people sort of panic and try and move and try and get off the track as quickly as they can, not realising they actually make the situation worse by having getting into the way of other cars that are trying to work their way past them. The most predictable thing to do, hold your brakes, and that's exactly what Andy Chell did. The problem is, at that point of the track, once you've committed to a line through there, it's very difficult to change that line. Yeah,
and especially when you can't see sort of behind, as you're behind other cars, it could get difficult for you. Now, Ettridge's speed does seem to be okay, so I think he'll be fine, but a scare for him, no doubt. Louis Hesker has been off at Copse Corner. This is not where you want to end up, off the road, but thankfully he hasn't had to do a turnaround on the in the middle of the road, and he'll just be able to use the alternative pit exit. Incidentally, the pit exit we use for the Britcar 24 Hours of Silverstone as we end the races on the old pit straight, of course, what you could call the old pit straight. well, that's what it is called, isn't it, these days?
Yeah.
So there you go.
The national.
That's the word I was looking for. National pit straight. Apologies. I swear I do know Silverstone. National pit straight, as it is called these days, where we hold the pit straight, the actual one for the Ricard 24 Hours of Silverstone. Which, by the way, I was speaking earlier that don't know much about Remy Gilbert. Only seen him in one race ever before, and that was that race in 2023. One of the final, in fact, the final 24-hour race we covered here on RaceSpotTV. It was in the cold of December, and Remy Gilbert was part of a team that got to a top 10 finish, a lower top 10 finish in the GT3 class on that day. Incidentally, in a Mercedes that day, rather than the Lamborghini, which is chosen for this series, but nevertheless, it will still all be in there. And he's already proved himself in Motorsport UK Esports competition, as we know. So that's where you may have seen him in the past. Still, though, trailing to Valero. 3.5 seconds is the gap. It's not one that looks like coming down for the moment, to be honest, but this is a good way to start the season. I just think the fear for everyone else is going to be, well, how are we going to beat Valero this season? Because there's no different formats. It's one 90-minute race, single car teams here this season with GT3 and GT4 machinery. Snetterton, Spa and Brandsatch to come, but it's all the same format. How do you get in front of Valero and beat him is the question that everyone else is going to have to answer.
That's the big money question, and I don't think right now that any drivers do have an answer to that, unfortunately for them, out of the field. And it's certainly be interested to see if anybody can challenge Valero. I mean, it's early stages though, it's only the first round, it's a 4-round championship, so it's important for Gal to get an early win here. Sets you up nicely to start off the season, and gives you the opportunity of sort of setting your stall of potential winning some of the prizes that are on offer. Remember, one of the prizes being for the driver who gets the most points in any class. So it's, don't start squeezing each other down the straight, and you're asking for trouble between those two.
Yeah, side by side between Andy Jones and Rocco Valentino. They're not even in the same class, but they're still going for it, and we can't complain about that as spectators. Side by side into Maggots and Beckett's, the Ferrari still with its nose alongside, but Rocco Valentino has to back out. Andy Jones will take priority there, and he'll take the position. He is a pro driver after all, so he's going to be pretty frustrated that he's getting challenged by an arm anyway. It might well happen again here into Stowe Corner. There's another duck out of the slipstream from a Porsche. The Ferrari ducks to the outside this time after finding no space on the inside. What a dive that is on the outside line. The prototype-looking GT3 Ferrari using all of its grip and downforce around the outside on that occasion. Now how's its braking performance? Into the final chicane. It will be through for the Mercedes again. Careful chopping across the nose of the Porsche like that one at Rocco Valentino, because Andy Castles was right there. He was flashing the lights as well with a little bit of disgust. Now he's under pressure from Tom Weston in another one of the Porsches. Side by side, he's flashing the lights again here, and through Tom Weston goes.
Wow, great stuff between these four drivers, and this isn't over yet. Oh, there's more paint bashing, panel bashing going on behind them as well. Adam Graveson's and Mike Barber, they're getting involved with each other as well. So 6 cars all together out there on track. Brilliant stuff to watch, and I was just sitting back and enjoying that one. But you're absolutely right, great move around the outside of Stowe, but I'll tell you what, that Mercedes was good on its brakes and able to hold on to that position for the time being. Worth pointing out as well, 2 drivers with drive-through penalties, Alistair Pollock and Louis Hesketh. They both are due down pit road for a drive-through penalty.
So we'll note that when they inevitably make their way down the lane again. This is about for 13th overall, by the way, and it's by far the biggest group on the circuit, but such an interesting one as well, involving a couple of different classes, of course, and all of the politics that comes with that. And only a few seconds away, by the way, is Marco Silva, who'll be closing in rapidly as a result of this. He was 2.3 seconds quicker than even Grevson on the back of the train. Valentino did a 2:05.3 because of all the fighting. That was nearly 4 seconds slower than Marco Silva. That is just an example of how you lose time battling in full view. Again, it's Valentino on the defence this time. Tom Weston looking for another position. He's been the one who's made up the most places in this group since we've joined them.
Rocco Valentino sandwich between Jones and Weston for DCW Racing. Oh, down the inside, late move. That Porsche, I can tell you, is good on its brakes. Can make a late move, but yes, as they go through. Oh, where did we? Oh, my heart just went then. I thought we'd lost one of his drivers, Andy Jones, but no, stays out there on track. So yeah, it is a Valentino sandwich right now with the two DCW Racing cars, and that Mercedes trying to make a runaway. Look at this, round the outside, gives you the inside for the next corner. Great stuff there from Tom Weston. Lovely stuff, and now it's Valentino's got to watch out for Anthony Castles.
Yep, Castles down the inside too. Through the entry corner they go, side by side again. It will be Mike Barber who's trying to get involved as well, and was briefly side by side with Castles there, but was forced to back out of it all. Now down into Brooklands they go. It's outside for Valentino, which will give him the inside for the next turn if he wants it, and he certainly does. Here he goes on the inside at Luffield. Long 180-degree switchback, of course, and he'll stay ahead. No, they get caught together slightly. They'll be both painfully slow off the exit here, and Mike Barber is going to be spoilt for choice in terms of places to go here. He decides for the backing out choice. Now what about round the outside for Anthony Castles? Through Copse they go. That's a spectacular overtake from the driver in that Porsche. He's through into 15th position. Mike Barber looks to go through as well. Rocco Valentino's gone from the aggressor with Andy Jones to the defence of everybody here. Adam Grevson's next up. He's looking for a way through and couldn't quite get it on the way out of Chapel there. Here's Marco Silva in the blue Mercedes. What a run he's got as they fight for the slipstream on the hangar straight. He's on the outside here. Can he switch it to the inside maybe for Stoke corner? Here they go. Oh, it's free wide. He was trying to give the space with Silva. In the end, was maybe a little bit too nice to Adam Grevson, who's got his position back.
Now, Marco has been a bit too aggressive there into Stir. Signals his intention with the flash of the headlights, but way too aggressive into there, and that's just meant that it compromised him through Stir. That allows him to lose the position to Adam Grevson. So Grevson goes through, and look at this. They're working their way through GT4 traffic as well through all of this. So good luck, everybody. It's time to just close your eyes and pray to whichever deity that you do support.
So that was side by side and three wide again with GT4 traffic, by the way, into turn 3 as we have another look at Brooklands exhibition of how not to do it. That was Daniel Tomlinson. This is Nuno Costa. I'm not sure whether we saw that earlier or whether we're seeing it again. Chico Leventhal. Maybe we're seeing that again, not sure. This is a spin somewhere else. Oh, Leaky McGee that we didn't see earlier, but that was from the top 10. Oh, we've got a live one too.
Yeah.
Anthony Castles, that is, who's gone around. Dearie me, this corner is proving to be very tricky.
Now, did he fall or was he pushed? That's the question there. And it was a fall. Oh, dearie me. This corner is catching out everything. It's caught out a front-engined car in the BMW, a rear-engined car in the Porsche, mid-engined cars in the Ferraris and Lamborghinis. Ferraris and Audis that have had the spins there. So certainly Brooklands catching out a lot of drivers here today. I was going to say, by the way, that who was it that said you can't make an overtake through Copse Corner? Well, these drivers just showed them that you can.
Yeah, I would have been inclined to say that at the start of this race, but proving that it is possible. And it's possible to be side by side and respectful through there as well, and make it out without crashing, which is good to see as well, which is sometimes proven tricky. So that's all good. But I'm afraid Anthony Castles has done all that hard work, and now he's going to have to do it all over again, because he's gone from the front of the group right to the very back again. Andy Jones and Tom Weston have been able to free themselves from that group now, and so it's really a fight for 15th place, although Mike Barber's threatening to break away too. Adam Grevson and Marco Silva recently got through, and Rocco Valentino, who I do feel for in a way, to be honest. I mean, he's not been wronged in any way, so I guess there's not much to feel sorry for, but he's lost so many positions in the last few moments, almost as a result of being someone who tried to be proactive and makes a move for 13th. Only now he's down, looking backwards at 19th.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that, attacking for 13th is currently in 18th place, so that has been not ideal. Remy Gilbert, by the way, has been closing up little by little. I can tell you, the last 5-lap average pace for Gaio Valero is a 2:01.013, a 2 minutes 0.715 average for Remy Gilbert. So think that's a 0.3 of a second average every lap for the last 5 laps.
Yeah,
it's not quite enough, I don't think.
No, well, yeah. I looked up at the clock actually and saw 16 minutes to go. This race going by a little bit quicker than I thought, and so yeah, maybe you might be right that that is a little bit too little, too late. But I think this is really encouraging again for the season. I was saying earlier on that is this going to be a Gaio Valero show for the remainder here? Well, not entirely. Gilbert is making sure that it isn't, and he'll close up a little bit more through Copse here as Valero is slowed up. However, Gilbert's got to get past that BMW, and maybe some of that closing has come down to the fact that Valero had to make that overtake and did struggle to do so. It doesn't look like the BMW overly eager to jump out of the way.
Has Gilbert also been doing a little bit of fuel saving as well to the start of the stint, and then being able to push on for the rest of it? Oh, Gilbert! Gilbert in the background of the shot went flying off. There you go, into the runoff, and the Lamborghini driver holds on to second place, but can kiss any chances of a lead goodbye.
I think he was just trying to be overly aggressive there, wasn't he, and make his way through. He was very much up on the curb on the inside there on the BMW, and that was only going to end one way, I'm afraid. Maybe a bit of desperation from him on that occasion. There is the onboard. I mean, there wasn't quite the space down there.
There's never the space there at all. I mean, what gap were you thinking of trying to go for? Because it didn't exist. Nathan Taig's had issues out there as well. So the driver who was fighting to try and get up to the AM leader in GT4 has had drama on this lap as well. Ironically, at Beckett's as well. So it's been quite the eventful place. Although that one, I think, is a bit more clear cut. As well as to who was at fault in that.
Yeah, so that's Nathan Taig off the road in the replay. Oh dear, Jack Southfield, the offending GT3. So not ideal, I think it's fair to say, on that occasion. Has Southfield held on? No. Somewhat unsurprisingly not. George Streetley is now in 5th place. As a result, they're half a minute away from the lead, by the way, but that has now changed overall. Well, that might well be settled now for the race lead overall. Gaio Valero leads by quite some way now, but a good fight put up by Remy Gilbert. Just maybe a slight bit of over-ambition into Maggots and Beckett's there. There's the McLaren off, I think, there. And there is on the right-hand side through Copse corner. Slight bit of desperation from Gilbert, I'm afraid, and something that maybe you'd struggle to see Valero doing, actually, if he was in the reverse position.
It was Yaman Pruis who was off at that Copse corner. So that's the smoke that you saw there. But, yeah, I think we saw a little bit of desperation from Gilbert, also a little bit of desperation from Jack Southfield, because, again, I think that was a situation of Nathan Taig was taking the line into Maggots and into Beckett's, and the door was always going to close because Southfield just wasn't alongside enough to actually make that corner his. And this is the thing with multi-class racing. It is very much blue flags are there just to tell the slower traffic that there is a fast car coming through. It's not like in Formula 1 where it's an instruction to say, get out of the way. It is very much hey, just to let you know, there is a faster car around. It's up to that faster car to safely go through that traffic.
Yeah, there's a world in which, in an F1 race, that would be deemed the lap car's fault. if this was an F1 race, because they weren't jumping out the way in the way that they should have been. But this is not Formula 1 racing. This is not open wheel racing even. This is GT racing, of course, where, as you say, the blue flag rules are a little bit different, which is, I personally think, the better way to do it. But
yes.
there you go. It's personal preference. This is what happened into Copse Corner. This is not teammate. Oh no! First rule of both sim racing and motorsport actually. Don't eat your teammate. Well, I'm afraid first rule broken, and round one, Janneman Proust, the driver who ends up in the gravel this time.
Stephen Koenig was involved in that as well. So the two teammates getting together there, and both driving. I know Stephen's driving in South Africa.
Janneman.
It's just that slight contact, and he's immediately pulled over to be like, sorry, got that one a little wrong there, mate. I think that'll be beers on me tonight.
Yeah, well, it's already quite late over in South Africa. I'm not sure whether they're 2 hours in front of us or one, but either way, it's getting on a little bit for those two. But such stalwarts of Motorsports UK competition and the esports side, see them driving plenty of times. They run a team together, for example, have done in the last 2 years of the Britcar 24 Hours, as Louis Hesketh is off the road. Now, he's already lost his rear bumper. I don't quite know where that's gone missing, but I'm afraid a little bit more of his car may be missing now at Copse Corner as he scraped along the wall, recovering from that latest spin.
That's the second time at Copse, isn't it, for Hesketh? It's just catching that grass. That's the thing with Copse Corner here in iRacing. You want to try and use that curb to help rotate the car through the corner here. The problem is, if you cut just that little bit too much onto the curb, it then means that it just unsettles the car, and around you go, and you feel a little bit silly there with that one. So, definitely. I have actually commentated on Stephen Koenig another series where, because of the unique situation that the South African power grid finds itself, he had a power cut halfway through the race.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully none of that this season, this time around, because that is a bit awkward for them. Just less than 10 minutes to go in this race at Silverstone. Today should be 5 to go when we get to the line here with Gal Valero in the Apex Racing Team car. Meanwhile, these guys...
Weston's dropping down. Oh, that's Weston right there.
Oh, no!
Oh, no!
One of the Lamborghinis ends up in the wall catastrophically. It's Mike Barber who's in pit lane. Tom Weston and Anthony Castle has come down pit lane now too, but Mike Barber has towed back to pit lane. That might well be him done for the day. This is what happened to Weston, who went for a spin. Don't tell me he rejoins in the path of someone. He does. Get avoided by everyone though, thankfully. And there's the contact. It's contact between Marco Silva and Mike Barber, who's the one who ends up in the wall catastrophically.
It's Richard Jeppen for one of the DCW racing drivers having issues there. We'll have a look at this one again from Weston. And again, it's that desperation to get pulled away, but you've got to be keeping an eye out on where cars are. And then Marco Silva, not Marco Silva, was it? It was a Mercedes. Oh, no, it was Marco Silva, yeah. Who got a little bit of a wiggle on the outside of Stowe Corner and into the side. And Mike Barber is sat on pit road with a mechanical beat while warning flag. Rocco Valentino, where you think, oh, well, it's going to be a good recovery for Rocco. It's got a drive-through penalty for hitting the instant limit as well.
So maybe that's what that was all about. Maybe that's what Castles did, because I didn't see him stop. But Tom Weston did stop, however, didn't take on a fast repair, so he wasn't damaged, but clearly needed, I guess, 4.5 seconds worth of fuel for whatever reason. So don't know if that gives anyone else any concerns here, or whether that means it's just a him problem. Andy Schell going for a spin out of the loop there. Not his greatest race, unfortunately, down in 18th position. Only one driver behind him now, Louis Hesketh, who has had his own multitude of problems today.
Just keeping an eye on pit stops. Nuno Costa is onto pit road for the second time, and this is not a penalty, so must be fuel related, which is a surprise for me, to be fair. I think I'm along with you. Rocco Valentino's going to serve their drive-through penalty now. Dan Tomlinson's got a drive-through penalty. I'm looking at the stint length. Andy Jones is one of the longest stint lengths in GT3, along with Anthony Castles at 28 laps. Everyone else is below that, 26, 27 laps you're looking at stint length. So, there are people out there that are on the limit, potentially. But they should be okay, in my opinion.
Well, if you'd have told me at the start of the race, I would have said certainly they'll be fine. But I am beginning to waver because I didn't think Tom Weston would be anywhere near needing fuel. But he's clearly come in for that exact reason. Whether anybody else is going to need to or not, we'll find out, of course. Philip Ansell is out there on 27 laps on fuel now. Andy Jones about to complete his 28th lap, although he is a minute and a half behind Gal Valero at the moment and about a minute behind Philip Ansell, who's just completed his 27th lap, as has Luciano Vitvert, as has Jack Southfield. George Streetley's about to do the same, Jordan Pierce as well. So there's plenty of drivers who have got a long stint going here. But as I mentioned earlier on, I thought 32 laps would be fine in terms of making this on fuel from here, in GT3 anyway. But maybe that's the way that the car has been designed, so that they have to do 2 pit stops. Though, as you say, that feels like a pretty theoretical and not realistic situation, really.
Let's not forget as well, fixed setup, so maybe a bit more forgiving to the AM drivers, maybe a bit more drag than you would see normally. Oliver Etheridge has had an issue out there on track. I thought he flashed up on my screen as having issues, and hopefully... Oh, and that is an issue!
It is. He's been tipped around by one of the McLarens, and has he got out ahead of Nathan Tighe? He has, by nearly 13 seconds. So despite 2 incidents in this second stint here for Oliver Etheridge, he's still leading the race somehow and still inside the top 5. So a good drive all in all from him, but not an ideal moment. He was carted out wide.
Oh, there's George Streetley. My goodness, it's all happening. That's 6th place, George Streetley heading around. Well, we seem to have, normally in a 24-hour race, we have the silly hour. It seems to be that we're that way right now.
Silly few minutes, I think we could call it. There's Andy Jones going around in his Mercedes. Reverses off the track smartly, and then we'll get back going again when there's a break in the traffic here in a couple of moments' time. There he goes. Back out onto the circuit again. George Streetley, by the way, has lost 5th place as a result of that incident. Jack Southfield back ahead, and he lost his position with an incident too. So it's just about staying clean at the moment. And I think that's been writ large for us in what we're going to see in the results here. At the moment, only 6 drivers within a minute of the current race leader, Gal Valero. That shows you how chaotic for some of these guys this race has actually been.
Yeah, it's been outside of the top 2 who were fighting quite hard, it must be said, to start with. It's been quite close for others out there on track, but it was more of a case of fighting over podium positions, fighting over mid-pack as well. We've seen some good racing out there. Carl Chase has now got a drive-through penalty. John McClune has got a second drive-through penalty. So, or at least second one that I've noticed. So, yeah, people are picking up the penalties right at the end of the race. The last point of the race that you want a penalty is on the last lap, because you want to be able to serve a drive-through penalty. You don't want to have that time added on to your results, because it's always more harsh as iRacing than if you just serve the penalty with the drive-through.
Yeah, it's a good general rule, actually, to remember. Sim racing in general, most sims tend to do that, give you a more harsh one for not serving it at all. As Janneman Proust goes off at turn 1. This is a replay. Was he helped? He certainly was. That's one of the BMWs. Now, I think, yeah, that may have been Leaking McGee running in the top 10, who it got Proust off into the tarmac on the outside there. If so, that's a possible top 10 under threat there for Leaking McGee, although he has nearly 10 seconds over Adam Locke, who's still second in the GT3 AMs. What a great recovery, by the way, for the third place driver in GT3 AM. Adam Grevson has finally worked his way through. He's passed Marco Silva. He's passed the likes of Nuno Costa and Anthony Castles, Tom Weston, who have all pitted recently. And Grevson is now on the podium despite spinning on the very first corner of the race.
Yeah, absolutely. Going from facing the wrong way to being in the class podium, I think you'd be happy with that one, that recovery drive. And it just shows how you've got to keep going and keep pushing in a race like this. Yeah, certainly good to see. Now, Andy Jones in his Mercedes had to pit after 29 laps. So we're seeing here what the different cars are like for frugility. If that is a word. But the Porsches generally are usually quite good on fuel. So we should see that them should be okay. It's the Lamborghinis I'm unsure about.
Well, I'm starting to wonder whether I'm sure about anyone now that I'm seeing this. Because we've seen more pit stops already than I was expecting. We've got John McClune into the pit lane, though he was a long way back anyway and is actually sliding back through the GT4s again as a result of this pit stop. Now, is Gal Valera going to come in on the last lap? No is the answer. Castle's behind, doesn't have to either, so it's going to be a victory lap here for Gal Valero. Will Remy Gilbert be able to follow him through? He will indeed. So, for the most part, people have been able to make the right stint length here and been able to make it on fuel. But what this fixed setup has done is made it super close in terms of making it or not, and maybe put a bit of an onus on saving a lap of fuel here or there across the race.
Yeah, you've got to think that long game as, steering me. Even on the last lap, Gal Valero is pushing all the way to the very end. And certainly as Luciano Wittvogt is on pit road, that's not a penalty. That's going to be a splash and dash.
Wow. He was in the running for a podium in this race. Is it for a splash and dash or is it a drive-through?
Well, it's not showing on my screen as a drive-through.
Is he stopping? He does stop. He was staying a long time on the fast lane there, but people don't often do that. But he did have to stop. And look at that. It's a painfully short amount of time.
It's cost the best part of half a minute there for Wittvogt. So, loses one place to Jack Southfield in this one. But we're on the final lap, and it's been a sterling drive from Gal Valera, and he's done this masterfully. And like I say, pushing all the way to the end of this race.
Great display from him. Anthony Castles has stopped on the Wellington Straight for some reason. Or slowed at least. That's
just pulling over.
Very odd. Yeah, he's pulling over. He's clearly got fuel in the tank. But anyway, we'll leave him to it. Meanwhile, Gal Valero is leading the way. Certainly the favourite going into this race and into this season, maybe. He's lived up to that favourite status so far. The Apex Racing Team driver has such experience in a range of cars here on iRacing. He can deal with any conditions, deal with any situation. He's just dealt with another. He's won the opening round of the Asetek SimSports GT Challenge here from Silverstone. It's Apex Racing Team's Gal Valero who takes the opening round of the season. He flashes the lights across the line. A good day's work complete from the Frenchman. He is the winner by around 8 seconds ahead of Remy Gilbert. A thoroughly deserving win.
Absolutely fantastic there from Gal Valera. It's faultless throughout the whole race. Really, really good result for him. Johnny Elia is going to be the best AM in the field in 8th place for GT3. Your GT4 leaders as well. They're just coming through Beckett. So Johnny Elia is going to be right up there with your GT4 leader of Kieran Sharp.
Looks like it. They may well take the line together. Well, ish. Elia still chasing around for a bit of slipstream here of Jordan Pierce, who's just ahead in the 198. Is there going to be even a fight, maybe? A little bit into Stowe corner. The two of them absolutely nose to tail, and Pierce is almost bumped out the way there as they fight into the corner. The 111 gets down the inside. Pierce slows down so much that maybe his teammate Keith Stewart will be able to get through, and indeed they will. Now Pierce looks like he's run out of fuel, but meanwhile Elia will take the race win here in the Porsche. The 111 car is the GT3 AM winner. There it is, confirmation in the Porsche race win here at Silverstone as Jordan Pierce trundles to the line. He's overtaken also by Kieran Sharp, who wins in GT4 Pro. In the end, it was 5 seconds, weathering a storm from Daniel Thomas, who really challenged him early on in this race, but couldn't quite do the same towards the end. And despite multiple problems, 2 incidents in the last 45 minutes of this race, Oliver Ettridge is going to win in GT4 AM to the tune of quite a few seconds in the end, surviving hell and high water in that one to win in the Porsche Cayman for a GT4 AM victory, and the best possible start that you can have for Oliver Ettridge. There is the overall race winner, though, here at Silverstone. In what was an interesting race to kick off this season. Still 3 more rounds to go, of course, and only 90 minutes of the what is going to be 6 hours of racing over the course of 4 rounds here in the next 2 months is underway with a good race there. And I think the one to pick out for me is Ollie Ettridge. Overcoming that many problems and that many incidents over the course of the race to still win is very impressive.
Yeah, very well done to Oliver. It did help that he had a bit of help with Nathan Tague having a couple of incidents himself. So, yeah, definitely a great result there for Oliver to get the win there. Kieran Sharp, I think, again, another one that didn't put a foot wrong there in GT4, as we'll see on the final results in a moment.
We certainly will. Let's have a look at how things stood after 1 hour and a half of racing. It was just 8 seconds between Garbalair and Rory Gilbert. 22 seconds back to Philip Ansel, who in the end wasn't challenged for his 3rd place. Jack Salvo was gifted 4th for the same reason. Luciano but needed a lap of fuel at the end. He finishes 5th ahead of George Streetley, the final driver, within a minute before we get to the GT3 AM winner. Johnny Illiot finishes 7th, narrowly ahead of Keith Stewart, Lee Kim-Wee and Adam Locke, all of whom get into the top 10 in the end. Jordan Pierce, running out of fuel on the last lap, finishes 11th ahead of Nuno Costa, Adam Grevson and Marco Silva, all the last drivers on the lead lap. 1 lap down was Tom Weston, with Alistair Leckie next. Stephen Hobbs, Nick Dealey, Mike Barber and Nathaniel Simpson round out the top 20 in GT3, followed by Dan Chiotti, Andy Jones, Nick Scott, Dan Tomlinson, Anthony Catsels and Rocco Valentino, both of whom had late problems and late pit stops. John McClune finished 3 laps down, and those who didn't get to the line, Chico Liventar, Ryan Ward and Marcus Hudson, there in the top 30, along with Mac Farquhar, who only made it roughly half of that race. In GT4, Kieran Sharp was the winner by 5 seconds. It was close between himself and Daniel Thomas at some point, but not towards the end. Richard Simner joins them on the podium with Mikey Pollard half a minute back. Oliver Ettridge wins in GT4 AM, just under 15 seconds ahead of Nathan Tague. It was Richard Jepp in 7th overall, with Matt Cheverton on the podium in GT4 AM. Lewis Clark and Jonas Janum round out the top 10. In 11th position in GT4, it was Stuart Bickley ahead of Charles Wimbley, although there was a minute between those two. That was a battle between Wimbley and Pollock, though. They were 12th and 13th. Stephen Kernick was next after contact with his teammate Carl Chase, split the two of them. Janneman Preuss was next. James Smaggersgale was in 17th position ahead of Andy Schell. It was Louis Hesketh, despite his lack of rear bumper, finishing 19th ahead of David Nichols, who was the first driver to retire. Well, that is it for your race results. Let's jump into some post-race interviews, and we've got no shortage of people to choose from. We'll go for the race winners, though, I think is the sensible choice, starting, of course, with the overall race winner, Gael Valero, who can join us now. Welcome in, Gael. Can you hear us? Yes.
Yes, loud and clear.
Good, and we can hear you as well. How was that race for you? Because you were challenged throughout a significant portion of it, but you came home with a few seconds in your back pocket. Was that what you were expecting?
I mean, it's an open race, so with Remy we had kind of the same pace, so it's down to the factors, the random, well, I won't say random, it's not random, but yeah, the pit stop and obviously the traffic made everything in these races with this level of difference in level. There's quite a lot of gain and loss to have, so I kept my cool and guess it worked.
How was the traffic to deal with here at Silverstone? We noted that it's a sort of a wider Grand Prix circuit. Did that help you in finding your way through the GT4s?
Man, I like the third or the fourth wave, I guess. I was in such a bad cycle. I was losing time everywhere. The GT4 were in a bad spot. The GT3 the blue flag weren't letting pass easily. So yeah, it was kind of hard. Just keep it on the track, gave it time, patience. You could see Remy was catching fast, and he got caught by these factors. So yeah, tough.
And just quickly as well, does that make you concerned about what it's going to be like at the tighter circuits like Snetterton and Brands Hatch?
It's obviously going to be much harder since Silverstone is so wide. But really, the defining factor is if you can stick it around the corners or not, because long corners is actually really hard to do so. Tight corners, it's alright. So Brands Hatch will be hard, I think. Snetterton, you maybe need to send it, but you have a bit of spaces. And Spa obviously is very good for multiclass, but yeah, we'll see.
We will. Congratulations on the win here tonight, Gal, and thanks for chatting to us as well.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Gal Valero. They're the overall race winner here tonight in the Asetek SimSports GT Challenge. We've got almost the whole grid here with us. We'll go through the class winners first, though. Johnny Elia finished first in the GT3 AMS, also finishing 7th overall. Welcome in, Johnny. Good to have you with us here tonight. How was that race for you, being sort of embedded in the midfield as you are in a GT3 AMS situation here to start off with, but that also meant that your rivals were kept at bay. How was the race overall?
Yeah, no, it was good. I mean, I think I was quite lucky at the start to keep out of the, lap 1 incidents. And then for me, I mean, I thought we were going to need to do another splash and dash at the end. So I was stuck behind a car. So I thought, time to do some fuel saving, which allowed me to jump someone in the stop as well, actually. So it kind of was benefit in the end. But no, really enjoyed it. It was quite tough. The track temps were quite high, and it was all about just keeping them tyres in good condition, because, you could feel the rear just wanting to go the more you push. So it was just be calm, just take it easy, get to the end, get the points. And that's what happened.
Just how restraining was the fixed setup here, both in terms of the driving, but more importantly, I think, more apparent to us anyway, was the fuel that obviously restricted everyone off the start of the race, caused everyone to pit after about half an hour in both classes, but actually it caused a few people to splash and dash, and a few notable people as well. How restricting was it?
It wasn't too bad, because I think, like I said, I was able to just sort of lift and coast on a few sections and still keep the pace up, which allowed me to have that window of not needing to do that splash and dash at the end.
Well, congratulations for making it all work and on the race win, of course. We look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Thanks very much for chatting to us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Johnny Elia there, the race winner from GT3 AM. We'll go through the race winners first. As I say, Kieran Sharp next up from GT4 as the pro winner, of course, and overall GT4 winner, I suppose, too. Welcome in, Kieran. Good to have you with us. You were challenged there by Daniel Thomas and others for quite some time early on in that race, but you were able to finish alone. Were you surprised by your own pace, or were you confident into tonight?
Yeah, I was hoping to be towards the sharp end, but I was expecting to lead the whole thing. And I was certainly under pressure for a good portion of the race and some time after the pit stop. In fact, I think I was only a couple of temps ahead of Daniel there out the pits, and I think I took a bit too much fuel in the stop. But I managed to get through the traffic safely and find some time there.
Just how was that calculation in terms of making this on fuel? Because it was a little bit tight in GT3, no such problems in GT4, which could last a little bit longer. Is it something that you really have to nail in these races to make sure that you're not sort of giving up free time in a stop that's going to be present, of course, in all 4 rounds of this series?
Yeah, I think it'd be good on fuel. However, I think you can find time by saving a bit of fuel. You might be able to take like a litre out or something, which is marginal, but he searched for those little gains here and there, and knowing that Daniel was behind me, I think he was able to save a bit. And in the Mercedes, it's the only car that you can clutch in and coast for long periods of time as well, out of all the GT4 cars. So I was expecting him to save a lot more than, to be honest. But I was saving a bit here and there just in case he had done it too. And I think it all paid off in the end, just keeping it calm and keeping it cool.
Well, congratulations on the GT4 overall win, and thanks for chatting to us too.
Thanks, you too, guys.
Thanks very much, Kieran Sharp there, the race winner in GT4. Last race winner, before we get to the others, will be Oliver Ettridge, who joins us as the GT4 AM winner on this occasion. Welcome in, Oliver, as well. Good to have you with us. You started in the midfield, of course, and you were involved in a couple of incidents in the last hour of the race as well. Just tell us about that, how that affected your race.
Yeah, firstly, thank for you guys and everyone at Motorsport UK for putting on this series. As for the incidents, basically, I'm glad that I built enough of a lead that they didn't really seem to matter. Whilst it would have been nice to really get stuck in with Richard in front in P3 for GT4 as a whole, I was really just trying to stick behind him, have a guide through the lap for the last hour and just bring it home.
I mean, you overcame them pretty well to win the race, of course. I mean, but how was the traffic overall? The GT4s are outnumbered in this series. There's more of the GT3s coming through on you. Was it fine generally in terms of them making the overtakes on you?
Yeah. On the whole, the majority of the GT3s were really respectful. And some that on one lap would come through and you think maybe they're trying their luck a bit, diving up the inside. The next time they come round, they're completely fine. It ebbs and flows, and it balances out for everyone on the whole, I think.
Yeah, certainly. You'd imagine so. Anyway, congratulations on the win here tonight, Oliver. Thanks so much for coming to chat to us, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Oliver Ettridge there joining us at the end of tonight's race. We've got a few more drivers from the podium. Platin did one of his spins on the screen there in slow motion in case he wants to see it again. There you go. A couple more of the podium drivers will clean through before we end the broadcast tonight, starting with Remy Gilbert, who joins us now too. Welcome in, Remy. Good to have you with us as well. You were challenging Garo Valera for quite a while in that race, but in the end it didn't quite work out for you. Just tell us about the incident that eventually gave that gap that sort of secured the win for Valero in the end.
Yeah, I think I only have myself to blame, really. I could see him getting closer and closer every lap, and I think I just got a bit eager trying to get past the traffic, and ended up in me sort of just sliding into the side of him, and it ended up spinning me around. So I'm a bit annoyed with myself, but obviously still managed P2, which is decent points for the championship.
Exactly. And what does this mean for the rest of the season for you? Do you feel like you've got a chance to beat and challenge Valero this season?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a really good driver, 9.6 thousand iRacing, I think. So, yeah, he's obviously pretty good. I think Silverstone is not quite my strongest track, but it'll be interesting when you go to Spa. I really like Spa, so I think that's one to look forward to.
Yeah. It certainly is. Congratulations on second place here tonight, Remy, and thanks for chatting to us too.
Thank you, and you.
Thanks very much, Remy Gilbert. Their second place here today in the overall standings and in GT3 Pro as well. Now, also in GT3 Pro, Philip Ansel is waiting for us. He was third today. We could chat to him too. Philip, welcome in. Good to have you with us. There was quite a fight for third place going on today between yourself, Luciano Vippert was there, and we also saw Ryan Ward up there at one point as well, although he fell away as a result of an incident, of course. Just what was that battle like from your perspective in that race?
Well, it was pretty interesting because I had a pretty shocking start. So my first concern was that the leading pack would just run away from me then with the slipstream and be able to save that little bit of extra fuel, which I then realized with the first stop was going to be quite hard then to make it to the end. So, but was got a good pit entry, got onto the back of Ryan and on the Porsche, and then it was just a matter of saving fuel, saving the tires, which really helped me. Then at the end, I had to save about a lap's worth of fuel to make it to the flag. So, but yeah, no, it was just a matter of managing both the tires and the fuel, and then it was a Remy and Gail, two really really quick drivers. So it was just a matter of accepting that the pace wasn't really there. But yeah, no, happy with the P3 here today after what happened at the start.
Yeah, it was certainly an interesting one to start off. I mean, what about moving up in this race? In this season, throughout the remaining races, there are still 3 to go. As you say, is there any hope for you to challenge those 2 Lamborghinis ahead, or would you count them in another league compared to the rest?
No, well, you should never say never in endurance racing, especially. So what happened with Ryan, a small incident was end your entire race. I mean, but of course, I would love to do it on pure pace, but I'll have to be a bit optimistic with my expectations. But I'm going to give it everything to challenge them in the next coming races, of course.
Of course, we look forward to seeing it. Thanks very much for chatting to us, Philip, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Philip Ansel there. Third place in GT3 overall and in Pro here today. To finish on GT3 drivers, we now bring in Nuno Costa, who finished on the podium in GT3 AM today, just behind Adam Locke and Johnny Elliott, who we've already talked to. Nuno, welcome in. Good to have you with us. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Good. I just wanted to make sure, just in case. I didn't see your mic on at the time, so it's fine now. Thanks for joining us. Good to have you with us. Third place, as I say, in the Ferrari, the only Ferrari actually to get on the podium with Adam Locke, of course, in GT3. Nobody managed it in Pro. How did you find this race and this circuit in the car today?
Well, it was awesome. It was my first race with this car. I decided to take on a new car for this challenge. I had probably less than 2 hours of practice with the car and with the track, but I thought that I would give it a go. And at the end, it was a great result. Adam was very, very competitive. I had to do a splash and dash at the end, so my fuel savings weren't enough. But at the end, I wasn't expecting to have the pace, so it was a very, very good result for an event that was very, very well organized. I did the 24 hours with Blocco Motor before, organized by Motorsport as well UK, and I think these events are really, really good, very well organized with a big range of different drivers, and I think that makes it very, very interesting.
It was certainly interesting to watch as well. And what does this mean for the rest of the season? You mentioned there that you ran out of fuel and had to splash and dash. Just how restrictive is that fixed setup, meaning that you have to pit? Is it totally enforcing a splash and dash, or do you think that in the future rounds you'll be able to save enough fuel to not do that?
No, I think the fixed setup is really good because it benefits a more equal level. So there's not advantage by setup, which people who have more experience can actually get. So the fixed setup, I think it's a very good option. I think in this particular track, I think that with a little bit of fuel saving, it was possible to avoid the final splash and dash. Maybe I'll see in the next. It depends on the track, so we'll try to see. Maybe it's possible. I think with a little bit more of fuel saving throughout the race.
Well, we'll see you at the next 3 rounds. Hopefully, Nuno, congratulations on the podium tonight, and thanks for chatting to us as well.
Thank you very much, guys. Great work.
Thanks very much. Nuno Costa there, third place in GT3 AM. That's the GT3s dealt with, but a couple more drivers from GT4 to chat to first. Before we leave you tonight, the third place driver in the overall standings for GT4s was Richard Simner, and he is with us now too. Welcome in, Richard. Good to have you with us. 15 seconds off second in the end and about 20 off of the win in that race, but plenty of interest and plenty of battles that you were able to fight off pretty well. How are you feeling at the end of that race in terms of your satisfaction levels and your performance?
I'm actually really satisfied. I think the two guys on the other 2 steps of the podium are definitely way ahead in pace. I think sort of quarter second a lap over the course of an hour and a half, you're always going to end up seconds behind. But yeah, a bit of bad luck with the traffic, and had a great fight behind with Oliver. And that was almost like a race long fight, to be honest. yeah, it's good to see somebody in AM with such good pace and keeping up with us. And to be honest, just capitalising on everybody else's bad luck ahead. To be fair, unfortunately, teammates, but. In the end of the day, it's one of those things. If you survive, you tend to get a good result. So I think that's kind of the story of my race. Really, just did good pace at various points in the race, but I think I probably overcooked it after the pit stop a little bit because I got jumped at the pits and wanted to get back ahead, so I had third overall. And in the end, I think I was just trying to conserve as much as I could for the last few laps because I knew I'd get a battle. And then, he got taken out. So that took the pressure off and I just brought it home, really.
What is it about the Porsche that everyone seems to like so much? There were a lot of them around you and you are in one as well. Is there anything notable that's made everyone choose it? Well, not everyone, but a lot of people choose it.
I'll be honest, with the fixed setup GT4 series, it tends to be really good. And then in any open setup series, it's the other way around. It's more Mercs and Astons that tend to have all the pace, and the Porsche tends to drop back a little bit. But that fixed setup is supremely good. It's got great rotation. You can carry a lot of speed through corners, and yes, it's just really, really great on the brakes. Really fun to drive, and I think it's a nice stable platform as well from the start to the end of a stint. So it's a good one.
Well, we look forward to seeing it again for the next 3 rounds, of course, from yourself. Congratulations on the podium tonight, and thanks for chatting to us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Richard Simner there, third place in GT4 Pro today. One last driver to chat to from the GT4 Anfield, with second place for Nathan Tagg here today. Welcome in, Nathan. Good to have you with us, and good to see you as a driver out there on the circuit today, rather than doing anything else behind the scenes or whatever it is. How was it to be out there on the circuit here tonight in this series?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I came in with pretty low expectations because, little secret, that's the first race I've ever done in the Cayman or in the GT4 on iRacing. I didn't own the car before this week, so a bit of a last minute kind of knee-jerk decision to try and race. But yeah, relatively happy. I think qualified relatively well. A couple more tenths in there. And the first half of the race was really strong, like keeping up with the guys ahead. Got shuffled back a little bit early on. I think I was a bit too naive. A little, let people have a little bit too much room, a little bit too much grace. But I was fairly happy with things. I think just after the pits, unfortunately, it unravelled a little bit. Got tangled up with a couple of GT3s that were getting a bit desperate, and ended up watching the race from afar rather than being involved in it.
You mentioned that you had low expectations coming into the season. What has this race done for those expectations? Is it heightened any, or are you still going in with that same mentality?
I feel a bit conflicted after the race, to be honest, because I think all of the ingredients were there to do well and fight further forwards. But I think with this format, you've got you're going to take the rough with the smooth. I think it's a really short season though. So you've got to minimise as much of the rough as possible. But yeah, I think I'm pleasantly surprised, and hopefully we can challenge Ollie for the AM title towards the end of the year.
We'll look forward to seeing it. Congratulations, Nathan, on a podium here tonight, and thanks for chatting to us after the race as well.
Yeah, cheers, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much. Nathan Tagg there chatting to us at the end of tonight's race, where he finished on the podium in GT4 AM, second place for him tonight. Well, that's just about it for our broadcast here tonight from Silverstone. Apologies for the issues at the start of today's race, but we hope that you enjoyed the race once we got into it, and I hope that you'll join us again in a couple of weeks' time. We'll be at the Snetterton 300 layout on Wednesday the 27th of March. Make sure you join us again at 7:30 UK time. Check yourself if you're in America and listening to this, because that will not quite be the same time for you anymore by the time we get there. So just bear that in mind. Snetterton's come in 2 weeks, Spa after that, and then Brands Hatch. There are the prizes at the bottom, of course. The winners of all 4 of the classes getting a session in the Base Performance Simulator, which is a GT sim, for those that don't know. For drivers that complete 50% or more of all of the races, for which, by the way, at least 49, maybe 50 of tonight's drivers will have qualified for so far. Just need to do that 3 more times. They qualify for the random selection in the La Prima Sim Racing Penals draw, and then the driver who scores the most points across all 4 of the championships wins a La Prima direct drive wheelbase with quick release adapters. So a big thanks to Asetek SimSports for sponsoring this series and providing the prizes as well. Paul, final thoughts from you on that race? A good way to open out the season, but there's still so much more to come from this series.
Yeah, there was a couple of spills, but also plenty of thrills in that one. I certainly enjoyed that one. And all I'll say is good luck to the drivers in 2 weeks' time at Snetterton, because I think that's going to be a whole different kettle of fish.
It certainly is. Make sure you join us again in a couple of weeks. But for now, this has been round 1 of the Asetek SimSports GT Challenge here live from Silverstone. I've been Ewan Leary alongside Paul Smith. Dane Bird has been pushing the buttons behind the scenes. And from all of us here at Silverstone, until we see you in a couple of weeks' time across the UK in Snetterton, it's goodbye for now.